or hadracha. Basically, I want to be very clear. So yes, correct, I was not in a classroom. So my goal and object is not to talk about classroom and teaching and technique, because I know nothing about it. It's not my field. My field for many, many years, decades, has been working with the wounded in our world, in the Olam HaTorah, the hurt, damaged, wounded people, and trying to assess what happened. How did they get to where they are? And how can we feed that information back to you so you can give it to your mechanchim so we can avoid some of this? Because reality, if we're completely honest without being cynical or negative, but if we're completely honest and we look at the results of such astonishing hard work being put in, it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. I'm going to share something that, just to begin with, that, you know, I hope you'll take and understand. I'm not saying this either as researched fact. Please don't quote me that I did say it as that. It's anecdotal. But for about the last 10 years, the last decade, I've been asking when I meet, and I don't mean in my office either, you know, I'll fan for all the kashas now. You know, it's not just my clients, no. I know a lot of people. You know, we meet, we have at our table for the last 5 years, Bachrim Shabbases and Beis Yaakov students come to us for Shabbos. We live in Eretz Yisrael now. I know lots and lots of people, children of friends, young adults. And for about the last 10 years, I've been inquiring of these young adults, because I hear their conversations when they feel kind of safe to open up. And I've asked them the following questions. Here's 4 statements. These are young adults who finished through 12 years. They're 19, 20, 18, 19, 20, 21. And I asked them which of these 4 statements most closely reflects how you feel at the moment. And this is disturbing. And I don't want to get into the debate. If anyone wants to discuss it with me later, by all means, I have no problem at all. But it's anecdotal. And I asked them, which of these 4 statements most closely reflects how you feel? A, my school experience was incredible, remarkable. I feel so close to Rabbi Shimon because of it. It was absolutely amazing. I am going to miss it. It really empowered me and inspired me. B, was okay. C, not really. Didn't really like it. And D, I hated it. I really hated it. I could burn those buildings down. I'm barely from, if I'm from at all, etc. So I don't want to go into that one, but etc., etc. Everyone can understand. So I've been asking this to loads and loads, hundreds and hundreds of young adults for about the last 10 years. And what has emerged, I then took some of those results and I checked it out with friends of mine who are, they would rather remain nameless, but you'll see why, who run Moshe HaTorah, and asked them, does this sound like it makes sense? And they said, yes, sadly so. And here's the results. The results are about 5% of them say A. About 10% of them say B. It was okay. About 75% of them say C, not really. And 10% say D. Which leaves us with about 85% in the not really negative side. That is very frightening. There are groups of people who've come through the system, and so much energy and effort has been put into trying to teach them, trying to develop them as Bnei Torah. And people get up. One time I spoke, I said this over, and someone got up very upset and said, Rabbi Russell, I don't know if it's any better in the school system, the public school system. And I said, I'm astonished you'd even say such a thing. And if we were selling math and English and geography and home economics, I don't know if I'd care. But if we're selling Yadus, If our mission statement is to sell Yadus, Torah mitzvahs, that's bad news. That's really bad news. I don't know if you read Rabbi Miller Tzali's book on the Holocaust, but he talks about, I mean, this is less than 100 years ago. You know, we say the revered names of Slobodka and Kovna, you know, we say these names. He says that in 1932, when he went to Slobodka, he said every half an hour, buses were leaving to Kovna on Shabbos with Yidden going shopping. And the Shabbos afternoon, buses were going constantly to the beach. Furthermore, I don't want to make a big fuss of this. I want to get into the material. I want you to understand my passion as I see and work with and hear so much hurt and disconnect from people who don't want to be hurt or disconnected, who desperately crave a relationship with Ribbono Shel Olam and connection to Ribbono Shel Olam. And they're hurting because they don't have it, they don't feel it. Today's, you know, people talk about the internet, and Avada, the schmutz on the internet, goes b'zunda sugya of its own, goes without saying, is mazik in the deepest way. But now what I'm hearing is how children, young adults, are looking. You know, today's internet is the Haskalah of then. Today they're looking and seeing TED Talks on all sorts of subjects in the world and reporting back that that was more meaningful to them than what they got in school. It talks to them deeper. I wouldn't say any of this if I didn't believe there was something we could do about it, some things we could do about it, some easy steps we could make that don't really cost a lot of money. They cost us the desire to refocus a little bit. But honestly, I believe if we were historians, if we could stand back and you know, see the bigger picture, we'd be scared. We'd be really scared. If I don't want to mention yeshivas, but it's not right. But I'm in Eretz Yisrael and I have kids come for Shabbos from various yeshivas, American kids who dress and look just like us, who tell me that Shachris is basically, with a minyan, is basically optional. They hope to get tefillin on before Shkia. If they put in 2, 3, 4 hours of learning a day, that's like a big deal. These are facts. These are realities. Again, my passion to this, I find it so scary to watch it, just getting worse and worse. And my passion is that we can change it. That's what I believe. And today's presentation comes from that passion and the belief that we can do something about it. We really can. But we need to refocus. We need to rethink. We need to feel safe just to question what we're doing and to evaluate how we're doing it and to think whether we can do it differently, more precisely in a way that makes more sense and that will reach all our children. Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah, Gimel Tes, Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa oime kol shiras chato kademis lachachmasai hachmasa miskayemis. If the yiras chet is there first, hachmasai, that which we teach and install in them, miskayemis. V'kol shechachmasa kademis liyiras chatoi. But if the chachma, the teaching, the learning, the musa, the halacha, is there before they have yiras chet, ein chachmasa miskayemis, it won't last, it won't stay with them. Zog the Rav, Chachmasa miskemis, why? Shachachma meviasa l'mashali b'chafetz v'uneneboy. Because if the yiras chet is there, then that which we teach them is consistent with what their heart desires. V'uneneboy. And they enjoy it. It's a geschmack. V'kol shechachmasa kedemes il yiras chatoi. But if the chachma, what we're teaching, the musa, the halacha, the Torah, is before they have yiras chet. Ein hachmasa miskemis. Why? She'einu loimid almanas lasis. They're not learning to do it. Hayol ve'ein levav paini lios yiras chet. They're not holding by yiras chet. So ein hachmasa miskemis. And listen to what he says. This is the Rav Bartanur. This is not Mishpacha magazine. It's not a psychologist here. This is the Rav. Shemitoich shehi monas oisa milaleches achrei shiras libai. Seeing as the Musa and the Halacha and the Torah prevents the child from going after his heart, from being a kid, from being him. Hu kotzba umeusa umeinicha. It's like a thorn in his side. He finds it disgusting and he'll dump it. It's a frightening picture. And the frightening picture is this. When we look at our children coming into our system, do they have yiras chet? Do they have yiras chet? They have year of anything. They're not scared of anyone or anything. Chutz b'yaska is the world we're living in today. But yiras chet. And even if you go with the Shloah Kodesh, has a different pshat in the Anfang to his Sefer, in the Sefer Shloah, where he brings this Mishnah and he reteaches yiras chet as shechoshkoi nafsha b'dveikus Hashem Yisparach. That his nefesh wants dveikus with Hashem. That's how he teaches. So yiras chet is dveikus bo Yisparach. Even that, kids come to school wanting yiras Hashem, wanting dveikus bo Yisparach. They don't want any of it. They don't know about it, never heard of it. For the vast majority of children, they have no sense of that. Ve'ein chachmas miskemis, like the Mishnah. It's profoundly important that we address this issue. Because otherwise, what's happening is like exactly what the Bartanura says, it monas oisai milaleches achrei shiras libai. It prevents them being happy, and they're not nenabai, they're not enjoying it. So what are we doing? What are we achieving if they internally are not getting it and enjoying it? It's not meaningful. How do we help our children reach this nafshe chashka b'dveikus Hashem Yisparach, so that the chachma that we're then going to install in them has relevance and meaning and kiyum? And it's not just external. How do we do that? Again, this sefer, this book, Spare the Child, I don't get, by the way, any royalties from this book. So I'm totally comfortable to say what I feel. And what I feel is this book is astonishing. I'm telling you, Rabbi say it's astonishing. And be'emes, if every young couple would be given 2 copies when they have their first child, and told to hurry in this book, study this book, do this book, number one, people like me will be mostly out of business, which is not a bad thing. And your job would be a meaningful job in a whole different way. It would be just a different job. Because what the book does, it guides parents through the sugya of how to create this. Because Rabbi Klein, he said before, that they're putting so much effort into parenting, because there's no question, if the product that arrives at the door of Chinuch already has no real connection to and almost a resistance to nafshe chashka, then we're in trouble. And we all know that as academia comes in more and more and more, so that whatever sheiris may exist in primary, where all the kids seem to love, Hashem, and it's all about Hashem, it seems to that feeling back out of the classroom as academia comes in. How do we get it? How do we maintain it? How do we develop it? If I say this book, I cannot tell you loud enough how strongly I feel that everyone, all the parents in your school should read this book. Have a conference on the book. Read the book yourselves. Talk about the book and the Yesodus HaChinuch, because it turns things on its head. We've been waiting a long time. Most of what I'm going to say today is either directly lifted out of the book, and I did it in order to whet your appetite. It's not that I'm stealing it, because it's consistent with everything I feel. It's consistent with everything I'm trying to be teaching all these years. But it's his, and I want to give it, credit where it's due. The structure of what I'm going to try and present is to whet your appetite. It comes from him, and perhaps some of my feelings and elaborations. Let's understand one basic yesod. This, of all the yesodis in the book, I hope I can bring out this yesod today. One, just one. The struggle between control and chinuch. This struggle. Children will never be matzliach in their lives ever without rules, structure, and discipline. It'll never happen. We'll have anarchy. It's utterly foolish. And the redners who speak out there, and they talk about the crucial issues of love and caring and connection, if they don't include, but there has to be in a package of rules, structure, and discipline, then they basically destroyed a generation of children. That's nuts. That's crazy. It's irresponsible. The question is, though, what's control and what's chinuch? Which is which, and how do you do them, and how do you merge them together so there's really a chinuch event happening and not a control event happening? We have to understand the difference between the two crystal clear and know how to play it out with our talmidim and our children so that what we're not doing is simply controlling them, but we're doing chinuch. Let's define our terms. So the pasuk in Mishlei Chanochana Pidaka, who doesn't know this pasuk, right? Gam ki yazkin lo yosem mimeni. Zog the gon. Let's analyze the gon. Lefi derech mazoloi v'tivo techancheu v'tadricheu lases mitzvahs. You have to guide a child according mazoloi v'tivoi. It has to be his nature. It has to be his personality. It has to be him. Va'az gam kasher yazkin lo yosim mimeni. Then you won't lose him when he gets older and he goes to Eretz Yisrael and he's doing, shachris is optional. I hate to say it, but it's a reality. But if you're always fighting against the nature of a child, forcing him in a place where he doesn't feel natural, and you're machricha keneged tivoi, forcing him against his nature, ato now yishmalacha miyirasosach. He'll listen to you because he's frightened of you. He doesn't want to get attention. He doesn't want to get in trouble. Doesn't get punished. His parents, his teacher, his manal. So he'll do it because of yira. But later on, when your grip on him is no longer there, it's impossible if we go against his nature, his teva, that he will stay with it. Right now, what we've done, is essentially created a fantasy of compliance. We've got the kids to comply, but it's a fantasy of compliance. The fantasy is that as long as I'm looking at them, as long as I have control over them right now, as long as I can force them to do it because of yira, they'll comply. But as soon as they're out of my eyesight, or out of my control, or out of my ability to punish them, they'll do whatever they want. They'll leave it. That's not chinuch. Somehow chinuch, the act of chinuch, has to engage mazolo v'tivai. And if it doesn't engage mazolo tivai, then we risk losing the kids later on, because we're machricha keneged tivai. It won't stay with them as ezog the gon. The event called chinuch, this event, according to what we've learned in the Batanur and what the Gaon is saying, occurs when we can help a child relate internally with pleasure and appreciation to that which Hashem wants of him. That's A. And B, to how what Hashem wants of him and how that relates to him, to Mazalo V'tivai. If it doesn't connect to his internal nature, to who he is, if it's not of value to him, then he's not going to keep it. It won't be internalized, it won't be meaningful to him, and he won't keep it. That's chinuch. The event has to be that he feels joyful about the fact that Hashem wants this, relates with pleasure, and it relates to me too. It's geschmack for me. So we have to show him how is mazal. First of all, we have to know what is mazal and tivai. We have to how do you do that? We get a research psychologist, get 10 in to try and work out what's mazal and tivai. It's not complex. I'm going to show it. But we have to know what mazal and tivai is. We have to be interested in at least helping emerge what is mazal and tivai. Instead of squashing it because we've leaned too far into the rules, structure, and discipline, and we have to get them all conforming too tight, where mazal and tivai can't emerge. And so the kid feels controlled and restricted and can't internalize with pleasure. He's actually feeling resistant. Think of the difference between the words. What is a melamed, for example, and what is a mechanech? Right? So melamed is about installation. A mechanech is about extraction. Means like this. A melamed is melamed. He installs information, yedias, that the child doesn't have. He doesn't know what a kometz is or a pasach is. He doesn't know a Rashi is. So we have to install information. He doesn't have yediyah in the words, what they mean and how they work together and what the implication is. So a melamed is installing yediyah into the mind of a child. A mechanech is about extraction. You make a Chanukas abayis. What's a Chanukas abayis? It's not showing off your house. It's not like, I got a new house. Let me invite the neighbors, to show off my house. What is a Chanukas abayis? It's a moment of dedication to the potential that lies in this house, to make a Shabbos, and make a Yontif, to bring up a family, to build a mishpacha, to do achnochs archim. It's a dedication of a potential that lies in this home. That's a Chanukas abayis. So Chinuch is about extracting out of the child what is your potential. Who are you? What's special about you? What are your gifts Rabbi Shalom gave you, and helping him apply those gifts to Rabbi Shalom. That would be the act of Chinuch. And failing to do that, failing to take that dogish and look for the moments, the subtle moments in the life and relationship between a parent and a child and a mechanech and his children. There are subtle moments, as I will show shortly, that right there is where it emerges. And when you grab that, he feels heard, he feels related to, he feels, you know me. And then you slap that experience to Rabbi Shalom. If we don't do that, and we're so busy with control, and syllabus, and the material, so we lose that. That's not chinuch. It has no shaykhs to chinuch. It says in Mesilas Yesharim, Ki yadua she'adam lo nivra ela lisanig el Hashem. Right? It's the greatest pleasure there is. It's Olam Haba. Okay, how'd you get there? Mitzvahs in this world. Do the children feel that what we're trying to do is bring them to an enjoyable life? That's not an to a child, that will never be an intellectual yediyah. Maybe it could be to us during Musa Seder. Could be to an adult. I'm not sure. But it could be that as an adult, maybe intellectually I could be kind of the idea that I'm actually enjoying myself right now, even if I'm not. From Tzar Agra, Chveis, we could. But a child zicha won't get that. Not a chance. Not a chance. For a child, it has to experience that pleasure. It's experiential. Do you understand? It's not intellectual. And if we're using control models and busy with syllabus and busy with material more, I'm not saying we'd give it up, chas v'shalom, but if that's the dogish more than schlepping out of a child his uniqueness that the Rabbi Shalom gave him and showing him how that connects with the Rabbi Shalom in a way that's pleasurable, then we've actively destroyed chinuch. We've actually taken steps to destroy what is called chinuch abanim and abanis. Unless we do that. The active definition of chinuch, therefore, would be three things. It's the things that we do that cause the children to experience joy and pleasure in ruchnius. That's A. They should experience joy and pleasure in ruchnius. B. They should desire to serve Hashem by doing His mitzvahs. And then C. Learn how to do it. We have the order the wrong way round. It has to start with creating in the child the desire and pleasure to enjoy, wanting to serve Rabbi Shalom. To want that and to find pleasure in it. And therefore, as I say, mechanchim, parents for sure, who sacrifice any of that for the structure and the process, have actively taken steps to destroy chinuch. by creating negativity, l'shem material, academia, syllabus. Do you understand? Creating negativity in our classrooms and mosters, in the child's heart, in pursuit of installing information, is actively committing ourselves to going against what is chinuch habonim v'habonos. That's not chinuch. Again, I promise you, towards the end, I know I'm starting off rather stark, forgive me. I'm so hurt for so many kids. I'm hurt like Rabbi Klein is hurt. You understand? I just seen too many people hurt, and they all want it. Believe me, there's not one of them that doesn't want this when they get older, and they're searching desperate for how to get it back. And we can do this, and I've got some ideas. I'm not going to leave everyone high and dry, I promise you. Chinuch, therefore, the process, the avodah, the job called chinuch, therefore, is about the present and the future. It's about connecting a child in this moment, in this classroom, in this experience of learning, in this moment towards their future life, where they will want to serve Rabbeinu Shalom. They'll want to be connected because it was geschmack. That's chinuch. Control has nothing to do with the future. It has only relevance to the present. I need some control now. But control never has any meaningful implications to the future. Chinuch does. Control doesn't. If we only do control, we're busy with control, then we're actively taking our kids away from the experience of connection to Rabbeinu Shalom. So the question that this all begs is, how do we connect or convert control into chinuch? Because control, as I said before, without it, you have anarchy. So how do we take the sugya called control, which is, discipline, structure, rules, all the rest of it, how do we take that process and convert that into the process called chinuch, where it has relevance to the future and nourishes their neshama, so they enjoy a relationship with Rabbeinu Shalom, and they feel that. Pretty much like kids do in primary. Most schools in primary, right, the primary class, you understand what I'm saying? Kids, everything's about Hashem. They come home, they're in love with Hashem. Why don't we maintain that when they're in 12th grade? Like, what happened? Shouldn't it get bigger? Why does it get less? And it gets less because we substitute control for chinuch. So how do we convert an act of control into an act of chinuch? There are two yesodis. One is through a process called internalization, and the other is through a process called association. Through these two dual processes, we convert a simple act of control into an act of chinuch. Internalization is the process whereby a person's external actions and behavior connect deeply with an internal experience which they value, which is meaningful to them. That's internalization. I want to internalize something outside that should be inside. Control without internalization is not chinuch. It helps right now, it disciplines them right now, but it doesn't inspire them to the future. And again, it creates that fantasy of compliance that when you take off the controlling act, they don't stay with it. Without internalization of the ideas that we're trying to get across to them, without finding a way to put that in there, so it's just control, it's just an act of control, not internalization. The Rishonim describe this process, which in a certain way we're going to see we have kashas on, as Adam nifel kfi puloisav. Right? Person becomes what he does, the external actions and behavior. V'libo v'kol machshavos tamid acha meisav shu oisek bahem. That which he does outside becomes inside. Ki achrei ha'pa'ulos nimshachim halavavos. Because after the external actions and behavior comes the heart. And what's fascinating about this, we all know this. It's in the chinuch, brings it down by mitzvahs, we know this. And the problem is, this does not stand up to reality, mostly. Sometimes yes, mostly not. We see kids who are conditioned for years and years and years through school systems, for example, into a type of dress code, where they're punished, controlled, forced and bribed into a dress code, which they have to do, a pain of who knows what. And then when they leave, they drop the dress code. They're forced, punished, bribed and rewarded into davening. And when they leave, Shachris is optional. What happened to Adam Nifel Kvi Perloisov? And the answer is very simple. Adam Nifel Kvi Perloisov is when you want it. When it's a behavior I want. When I desire it, then that's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's the sort of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Right? If you want it, and I want it deeply, so I keep doing it and doing it and doing it because it's something I want, can become internalized. But if it's not something I want, that doesn't work. And we're foolish if we think it does. Actually, again, it's the opposite to chinuch. It's conditioning them to be dying to give it up. Do you understand? We're creating an internal experience. I can't wait to get out of school so I can stop it. Because I don't like it. If it's just external control. Adam Nifel Kvi Perloisov. You know, and then they tell me, you know, we got all these great lines. It's all true if it's something you want. And it completely doesn't work at all if it's not something you desire internally. It doesn't touch you. It's not important to you. It doesn't reach you. Let me explain this a little deeper. A human being, man is a beicher. We are created by Hashem to choose. If we lose the ability to choose that which we want to do, I lose my humanity. I'm not a person. I make a choice. Even the Torah, I once said in the drasha, I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I was speaking in square once, and I wanted to say it. I was so scared to say it, they'd misunderstand me. But I was speaking English, and they didn't understand English. I promised I was going to have a panic attack. Because I said to them, I want to say something, that Torah and mitzvahs are optional. Anyway, they all looked at me like they understood, and there was like this gasp. And I said, no, I'll tell you what I mean. If the Eibishter wanted to force us to do it, he could have. But instead, he said, Bachar to Bachayim. And then he gave us schar, and he gave us einish, and he supported the system and said, you choose. I'm putting it in your hands. Because Hashem wants that. He gave us a yetzer tov, yetzer and said, you choose. A chiyuv is what I want you to do. Mitzvahs, like the Arizal says, they're eitzes to help a person come close to the Rabbi Shalom. So you choose. Because man is a beicher. And if you stop being a beicher, you lose your humanity. You're not a person anymore. And a child feels that way too. A child feels when they're forced and forced and forced, keneged their rotzen hapnimi, they lose their humanity. They don't feel good about it, they feel terrible. That's why Godla mitzvah, Mishaina mitzvah. Because it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to go against and be told what to do. No one wants to be told what to do. Therefore, forcing kids without doing a genuine process of internalization, thinking that we're going to do Adam Nifel Kvi Perloisov for 12 years, we'll force them to do it, and they're going to continue doing it. Where internally, it was always resisted inside, except for the 15%, right? We've got the 5 and the 10. Those two groups, they enjoy it. And that's why they do it, by the way, if you interview them. Last Shabbos, we had 9 seminary students in my house. They're all, 2 graduated, they were second year. 1 had come back married, 1 was second year, and the other 7 were all present in Chashuva, what can I say? A very nice Eretz seminars. Mostly children were friends of ours. They brought friends, and we had 9 of them for Shabbos. So I figured Friday night, let me throw this out and see what they think. Would you believe of my statistics? 9 present good girls. 1 said A. It was amazing. 2 said B. 4 said C, and 2 said D. I was shocked. 2 of them said D. There were 6 out of the 9 with the negative. It's a mamish astonishing. And when we talked it out, it was by rov yigir of midas that kept them with it. But they weren't happy about it. They weren't enjoying it. No one wants to be forced and told what to do. It's the nature of a child. So this struggle of rules, structure, and discipline, and help control them, we have to understand is directly connected their metzius. And we will not achieve anything without internalization, unless they internalize why we're doing these rules, structure, and discipline, why this is meaningful, what's the value of this. Unless we do that, and that's more important than the etzem act of controlling them. Does that make sense? The etzem act, devoid of internalization, could be destructive. So the helping them relate to why we're doing this becomes more important in terms of chinuch and their future than the etzem act of the control. In terms of internalization, the process of chinuch aims as the follows. 1, to train the child to do what's good, to inspire the child to want the right values, and therefore to internalize them. We train them, inspire them, and that internalizes it, because it's a value they can be koina. It's meaningful to them. That's different to, like, I'm going to convince you. Only have to do it if I can convince you to do it. If I can inspire you, then you should do it. That's crazy. That's not chinuch. That's a terrible way to treat a child. Like, you only have to do it if I can come up with a good enough reason to convince you why you should do it. That's very, very miserable. But when we go through this act of control, which we have to do with all children, if we don't incorporate the helping them internalize the value of why this is so important, and to really internalize that, then we haven't done chinuch, and when gam kiyaskin yosem menu. That's internalization. The second concept is association. Let me just one thing. No, we got it. We got internalization. He mentions in the book, the Chavetz Chaim fragged a good shaila by the Cossacks. The early Cossacks were like the warriors, the fighter warriors, the powerful fighter warriors. And Chavetz Chaim fragged, how come these warriors, 25 years, they were like the most disciplined, powerful warriors, and as soon as they finished being Cossacks, they sat in the taverns and the beer halls getting fat, drunken, and just telling over meisim of everything they did. What happened to all the discipline? Fragged the Chavetz Chaim. What happened? And the Chavetz Chaim fanfare, he said, because they didn't want to do it in the first place. No one, in early days it was not true, they did. But the later day Cossacks, in the Chavetz Chaim's time, were conscripted, they were forced to be there. No one wanted to be 25 years of their life being a Cossack. So even though 25 years they were forced to be disciplined and all the rest of it, and for the Chavetz Chaim, it was never internalized. I mean, Mela, when they left, they're in the beer halls getting fat, drunk, and crazy. The second idea is association. Can I take all questions after this, okay? If I'll be here. What's association? Association. So the Alter gives a very interesting mashal of association. And the mashal he gives is of the dancing bears. The gypsies get these dancing bears to dance. How do they get them to dance? They play a flute, and suddenly the bears, he said, it wasn't because the bears like music or like dancing. That's for sure not. So the Alter zogged the reason they danced was actually through extreme cruelty. Extreme cruelty. They would take a bear cub and put it in a cage where they put red hot coals on the bottom of the cage, and the moment they put in the bear, they play the flute. They play the flute, and the bear would be jumping up and down, burning its paws, would be jumping, looking like it's dancing. And then they'd stop playing the flute and they'd bring it out. Then they'd put it back in and play the flute. And after doing this long enough, there was an association between two things that became internalized by association, that when I hear flute music, I start dancing because they actually feel the burning coal on their paws. We know this through Pavlov and his dogs, right? Thank you. Right, the conditioned response, when the original Pavlov, the original experiments were when the lab technicians, by accident, they had the dogs all wired up, and the lab technicians brought food to the dogs in between, you know, when the experiments wasn't the experiment, in between they brought them food. And then they noticed that the dogs started salivating just seeing the lab technicians' white coats. They would start salivating. That's association. Essentially a neutral thing like a lab coat and food, and they became associated and caused salivation. What is positive association? So positive association connects any positive feelings with activities that are essentially neutral. Essentially neutral. And you can make a positive experience. And if you do it for long enough, you can actually create a positive association through the experience the child is having. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a few examples. These examples of things I heard and been questioned about over the years, being consulted on. So a yeshiva has a policy, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade kids have to come for shachris in the morning. Inevitably, some come late. I mean, did anyone have a yeshiva where everyone's there on time? It's not possible. So there's always latecomers, and there's always reasons why they come late. Oh, there is someone who has it? There's no such thing, there's no such Messias, right? Now I've heard over the years, over the decades, really terrible things about how this was dealt with. The primary way is knassing the parents. Like if we knass the parents enough, maybe they'll make sure to get their act together and get the kids to school, maybe. Except what happens is the parents are just mad, burning mad at the kid, you know, because I got to fork out money because you're late, which creates more negative association. In fact, I've never heard of a mahalach that actually worked convincingly well for the 85%, never. So I suggested something, to try something out, and I had a few manalim tried it out and told me it was amazing, spectacular actually. And here's what they did. Manal daven shachritz first, and the boys come in, and as they come in late, he turns to the boys and says, "Wow, uncle, you came. Wow, must have been hard for you this morning. So glad you came. Here, go to your seat." And Beryl comes a little later. He said, "Beryl, wow, you must have really been fighting this morning. Must have been really hard for you. Quick, go to your seat. I'm so glad you came. I can't believe it. Wow." And Shmerel comes, you know, halfway through, towards the end. He says, "Wow, I can't believe it. You probably wanted to give up. You probably wanted to, like, just pretend you were ill. I don't know. You came. I have no idea what you overcame. Go to your seat, daven." Whatever, it's almost like the later they come, the more positive you react to the latecomer and compliment him. He must have overcome his Yetzer Hara. Who knows what he went through, but it probably wasn't easy, whatever happened this morning. And we acknowledge that, and we're proud of you. Positive association. That means when he walks in that door, there is now a positive association to the experience of coming late, which for most kids is clearly a negative association. And lo and behold, people, the Mekatrigim say, now all the kids will want to come late because they're all going to get the... So if they all crave attention that bad, they should all come late. That's number one. Let them all come late. Have a game with them. If that's what they need, Rabbi, I give it to them. What are we kidding ourselves? It doesn't make sense. But I tell you, it doesn't happen. Because the natural child, do you understand, has a positive association to actually feeling good because a Rebbe or a teacher did such a good job on communicating the experience of being in davening and what it means, because you do talk about it all the time. So his positive feeling was internalized already, and he wants to be there on time. You did chinuch. That was chinuch. And for the ones who come late, they're the ones who need the positive association. And it's a game changer, Rabbi Say, when he stands at the door excited and whispering to each kid, wow, I have no idea what you went through, whatever it was. Wow. Now, of course, a kid does it chronic. Later on, the next day, later that day, you go over to him, you sit down with him. What's going on? How can I help you? You understand, if it becomes a pattern, you go speak to him. But not at that moment. At that moment, you want to create a positive association. And I'm telling you, it works. I spoke about this Thursday night in Toronto. I mentioned this. And already Friday morning, David, am I correct? There were a couple of Mananim came over to me on Shabbos and said, I thought you were nuts, but we tried it out anyway. It was like, I saw a smile on the kid's face. They thought, I don't know what exactly, but they were smiling. They saw, right, you can see it. It's amazing. I'll give you another one. Kid has a hard time with Kriya. Little kid. And you read a Pasuk Chumash that has 9 words in a Pasuk Chumash. And he gets 5 words wrong. What does the average normal father mechanech do at that moment? You chazer over the words you got wrong. Read that one again, you got it wrong. That's not a pasuk, it's a comments. That's not a shvah, that's not this, that's not that. You make him read it again and again and again. What happens typically? Kid's miserable. You've created a negative association. So what's the other way, the Russell madness? You ignore the words he gets wrong, and you make a fuss of the words he gets right. Oh, you got that one right. Gavaldi. Oh, you got this one right too. Excellent. And you totally ignore the ones he gets wrong. Why? Because we're trying to create a positive association towards that experience of working out how to read words properly. You know what happens when you do it? Is Uvdu, I've seen it countless times when you do it properly. The kid turns to you. I did this with fathers for years and years and years. The kid turns and says, yeah, but what about that one? And you have to resist your Sahara. You say, don't worry about it. Let's go weiter. Let's go weiter. You got 4. Let's get to the next pasuk. You know what the kid does? No, but Tati, I want this one. And you say, no, it's fine. You're going to... No, really tell me what happened? Positive association to the process of feeling a geschmack in working out those osius. Whereas the other way is only a negative association to it. Even, I submit to you, and this is going to be a hard one to hear at first, but you'll get this one. The Rebbe's smile in that classroom is probably the most crucial piece for Messiah's HaTorah for all these children than everything else he ever does. I submit that anyone, those little tefillin mirrors, we need to keep one in our pockets. If you have kids or you're mechanech, keep one in your pocket. Take a quick look every now and then. If you're not smiling, go to the bathroom. Get a substitute that day. Because your smile communicates Messiah's HaTorah, the geschmack of what it is we're trying to do, probably more than everything else you ever teach or say. Certainly, I really mean it. And guess when your smile's most valuable? When he defies you. When a kid defies you, at the moment of defiance, what do most of us do? What's old school chinuch? Listen, I grew up getting caned and slippered and all the whole works, That was the world once. That's not this world. So what typically happens when a kid defies? You get the angry face, you get the evil eye, right? That's what happens immediately. Negative association. That means the classroom is a negative place. School is a negative place. Torah is a negative thing because that's what we're selling. We've made a negative association instead of what we could have done is given a big smile to the kid. Is okay, I see you're having a hard time. Years ago I had a couple of yeshivas did this, elementary schools, it was moyudik. I had them make little cards. Green, yellow and red cards. Yellow, orange and red cards. The yellow card said on it, your Rebbe, understand you're having a hard day. And when the kid started acting out, quietly, discreetly dropped it on the desk. If the kid didn't settle down, dropped an orange card. Your Rebbe, understanding you're having a really hard day. Really underlined. And if they really didn't settle down then They got a red card. Your Rebbe, understand, wow, you're having such a hard day. Please go to the Manal and get a Danish and a soda and discuss with the Manal why you're having such a hard day. Again, everyone reacted to me. They said, you're mad. Everyone's going to want to get the red card to get the Danish and the soda. And it's never happened. It never happened. I had one Hasidische school, Monsi. They translated it into Yiddish. It was amazing. They had these little red cards, and they told me it worked. They called me up. They said it was amazing. What's the difference? What happens? The Manal's relationship, when he starts dealing with the kid, is an immediate positive association. It's not, you're not getting threatened by the Manal, but you're sent to the Manal not to be told off and be criticized. You're sent to the Manal so the Manal can help you work out why you're having such a hard day. You've created positive association to what we're doing instead of negative association. And I submit to you, the negative is destructive. It's not Chinuch. Has no shaykhs to Chinuch. It's just something you do right now because of control and frustration. The smile on the Rebbe's face, dafka when they defy, conveys to a child, I'm having a geschmack life. I love Torah mitzvahs. I'm enjoying myself. And your defiance doesn't interrupt my enjoyment. You're important to me. I value you. And I'm enjoying my experience of working with you. That's what the smile conveys. It creates a positive association. What's the tragedy of negative association? The kiyadua. The humiliating experience I've heard from countless kids, young adults now, and adults who are we're told how many times you're just lazy, why aren't you trying hard, why aren't you working harder, you're not paying attention, negative, until the negativity and the association to learning is crippling to the rest of their lives. The kids who were told, don't keep your finger on the place. Again, when we were kids, you got whacked with a hanger if you didn't have your finger on the place. Again, you go to jail for that today, I think, I'm pretty sure. I was just in Gateshead speaking. I said something about the insult punch is the only punch you can give. And they said, not true. Scotland and Wales have now passed a law. You can't even do that to your kid anymore. They passed a law. You can't even do an insult punch. You can't do anything. It's like mind-boggling. But the horrible humiliation and pain that they feel that so destroys the neshama, destroys their metzias, when they're told they're lazy, not trying hard enough, pay attention, what's wrong with you? I mean, crazy stuff. Children I've had who were forced by their parents to sit next to them in shul, and the father's busy pointing the whole time, what he has to daven, who grow up as adults with claustrophobia, can't walk into... I know people who can't walk into a shul, can barely walk into... It takes every ounce of energy to sit in a shul. They can't sit in pews like this, in the middle. They sit on the end only. I know people who comes Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, they come to me for help because they have so much anxiety, but they got to get into a shul Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And meanwhile, they daven outside by the door, if they go at all. It's posher because of all this criticism and control that didn't allow their uniqueness, them to emerge, and they disappeared. A person disappeared. Let me read you a few letters. First two are from people close to me, and the third one is from the book about negative association. Here's an email I received from one of my clients. Just returned from a chasna. It was harder than I thought it would be. Two of the guests were Rabbi and Mrs. X. He was my high school principal and she was my Chumash teacher. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I still have constant nightmares from her class. Most recent nightmare was just 2 days ago. She was the only teacher who insisted that I took a turn to read out loud in class. All the others were making me do it once or twice, immediately chapped that I couldn't read, and let me be. To this day, I still relive the repeated humiliation again and again. I think this was even more painful than failing math tests. In both, I wasn't told I was always told, try harder, stop being lazy, stop telling yourself you can't. But at least tests were private. In Chumash, the whole class would hear me bumble through psukim like an illiterate idiot. To this day, one of my biggest constant repetitive heartaches in my life is my inability to read even a simple kid's book to my grandchildren. She's still struggling with it. For back then, the association, the negative association was so humiliating to the core, especially like PTSD, it's post-traumatic stress disorder, just thinking about it. And I hear this from countless young men struggling, and the reason they're learning 2 hours a day is 100% nothing to do with Ashkafas HaTorah. They wish they could. They can't because they open a Gemara and they start having panic inside. Panic, Pasha panic. Reading is an experience of I'm about to be humiliated. If I sit with a chavrusa, they'll try everything in the world to just find some chavrusa who really knows nothing. Otherwise they feel totally humiliated. There are boys I know who stay with the same Masechta forever. They'll never take another Masechta. It's fascinating. They like, they like Kedushin, it's their Gemara, and they have all sorts of lomdus why. Actually, they're terrified to open up anything else. Listen to this one. Dear Rabbi Russell, I'm writing as requested to describe my experiences as an adult with learning and davening trauma. I do not want to discuss the events of my life that contributed to my difficulties because I'm afraid people will get stuck on the individuality of my story and ignore others that may be similarly suffering. I'm smart, I'm successful, I'm a confident adult. Yet when I'm faced with a Blat Gemara or when someone begins to tell me the latest pshat on the parsha, my mind goes blank. It's as if my ability to think disappears. Doing homework or learning with my sons is torture as I stare at the Gemara, dreading the moment when my son will ask me what a word means and I'll need to answer or face shame in not knowing basic taich. If any Hebrew phrase is used in a conversation, my mind goes blank and I can no longer follow the conversation. It's as if a plug is pulled. When I enter shul, my entire body tenses up. I just want to escape. I try as hard as possible to get an aisle seat because a sense of claustrophobia sets in. I may need to take breaks just to leave the room, leave davening early or not go at all. To avoid these sensations, I've likened the feeling I often get while attending shul as wanting to pull off all my skin from frustration. I also feel my face tensing up, my normal, easy smile compressing into a frown. To help release some of this frustration, I often pace in the little space near my seat. I've tried many approaches over the years to address these issues, working with Rebbeim independently and in therapy. At the advice of Rebbeim, I've tried learning the halachas of davening, the meaning of the words and the deeper meaning of the tefillahs. I've poured my heart out to Hashem. I've tried trauma-targeted therapy techniques. It is so difficult when I cannot go with my sons to shul or learn with them. It eats away at my sense of myself as a father and as a frum yid. I know that one day this shall pass by HaKadosh Baruch Hu's blessing, but until then, I live in pain and frustration. That's negative association. That's learning trauma, and that's davening trauma. It's traumatic. The experience of humiliation and negativity, forcing and controlling someone into a behavior that they weren't ready for or able to do or needed more space to be able to do it, more time, more flexibility. And these things are, by the way, unbelievably subtle. We're not talking, do you understand? We're talking about subtleties, little spaces, little bits of flexibility, little bits of room for the person to gear themselves to be able to do it. And denying that is denying their humanity. And it traumatizes them. It traumatizes them. This one is out of the book, Spare the Child, Negative Association. I can never forgive because I can never forget. And I can never forget because it isn't just something from the past. It's happening today, every day. It's become a part of who I am. It's with me all the time, and it makes my life hopeless and depressing. I literally can't look at a Gemara. When I just open a Gemara, I can feel, literally, my tutor's pinches, put-downs, and the suffocating feeling. I don't know if you'll understand, but I do not just mean to say that I remember what he did to me then. I mean to say that I feel what he is doing to me right now. It's like it's happening every time again. I know that it's the tutor, not the Gemara. He apparently thought that my poor parents paid him their last hard-saved pennies to make me the victim of his frustrations, temper, cruelty, and other bad middas. He seemed to think that my parents hired him to make me hate Gemara and distance me from learning. Fine, so I understand that it's him, not the Gemara. But that makes no difference. The fact is that I can't even bring myself to participate in a Daf Yomi shir. I'm done with Gemara. I will not forgive him for the rest of my life, and certainly not at the entrance to Gehinnom. He sent me there. How and why should I forgive him? The negative association, by not giving the space, by forcing a child, keneged tivoi v'mazalei, for not allowing that to emerge and giving him the room to be able to do it when and how in a way that he can, within the confines of his personal development and his nature and thing, causes this, which is why we have so many in that group C that's so painful. And I'm telling you again, they also got the message, by the way, group C, I didn't say this at the beginning, they still want it. In other words, they picked up that this is right. Do you understand? They picked up that what's being taught is right. But they're so traumatized, they can't have access to it because they were so controlled and forced. Instead of doing the internalization, the association that's necessary for chinuch, it was simply control, till they disappeared. And they disappeared into a world of pain, fight and flight, essentially. It's PTSD. That's where they disappeared. This also for emphasis why everyone's asking the question, why are there so many anxiety disorders present today in our children? How could that be? And it is. It's a fact. It's been researched, by the way. There are people who've done studies already, and they've proven that we have a far higher percentage of anxiety disorders. And it comes from, it's all mishtarain in this sugya of kids being controlled instead of us doing the act of chinuch.
30 years ago, we were more controlled.
Say again?
30 years ago, we were more controlled and there was less anxiety.
Yeah, I have a whole drush on that, Elaine. It's a different drush, which they didn't want me to give today. Okay, that's on. They'll invite me back. We'll do it next time. Why did the world come to this matzav? I got a drush. I'm sorry. You'll trust me that it's changed. Suffice to say, the world changed. Yeah. So all this occurs basically when we're doing control without chinuch. Oh, it's interesting. I just noticed I wrote a note. Again, in previous diaries, this might have worked. Unbelievable. You're right on target. Mamish right here. I wrote it handwritten in pen. I'm in the same place you are. You understand? In previous diaries, it would have worked, and it did work. But I don't think I should take all the questions now. I'm so sorry. I'll lose my flow. But when a child is essentially in this door, demanded, forced, crushed into being not who they are, you see, it's in this door, that's when we lose them. It's this generation. That's the we have to realize it's changed. Again, Rabbi Engel will tell you all afterwards, I have very thought out drushes. Am I correct, Rabbi Engel, on this subject, where I've tried to teach this and explain in order that we can all come to terms with it. Suffice for now, I can prove it, just not now, but it's a fact. The Metzias has changed in the world of children from the world of children of one generation, certainly 2 generations ago. It's just gone. It's changed. Here's the 4 steps how it happens to the kids then, how we lose them. Number 1, they begin to realize they find the learning, the studying, the attention necessary to focus, they find it very, very difficult. They find it's not lefi mazolo and tivai what we're demanding of them. So they find it difficult. Step 2 is they resist because it's so hard. It's so hard to do, they resist. And the reaction to that resistance, step 3, is the parents, mechanchim, school, teachers, whatever, demand more of them and push them harder because he's got to know, he's got to learn. How will he go to learn? He won't get to yeshiva, and he won't get to high school, and he won't get shidduchim, whatever it is. We're like, he has to. A child has to. He just has to. And so the reaction to his resistance is to fight him even harder, which causes him to be even more hurt and distanced and disconnected and dissociated with the process, which hurts him even more, which always causes a counter-reaction of fear to try even harder to get him. And the kid's left with one option. Give it up. Kotzba, me'usa, umanicha. Without the association, internalization, he's left with what the Batsanur says, Kotzba Musa Manicha. In fact, of the 4 reasons that all children fail in school, when you analyze why kids fail, there's always one of 4, there's a shirish is one of 4 reasons. It's either they react, they're struggling as a desire for more attention, a desire for more power, a desire for control, or the big one of all, avoidance of failure. That's the biggest one. the kids by that time realize this is too hurtful, and if I can just convince everyone to back off, well, how do I do that? Let me just go off. Let me just disconnect. Let me act like a dunce. Let me just get them off my back because I can't stand this. So it's avoidance of failure by giving up, and I want to just disconnect from the whole thing. That's what happens. That's the tragedy of negative association when we use the wrong methodology. We're not doing chinuch, we're just doing control without chinuch, and then we lose the kids. That's the tragedy. So, but now I'm guessing, let me throw one more piece in before I do this. Then I'm coming to the good part now. Like, what do we do about it? I've tried to I want to make my case with one more thing, prizes. I want to mention prizes. People think prizes are gewaltige motivational tools. They're amazing. It's 100% not true. Rewarding and bribing kids without doing chinuch is just as destructive and destroys their lives too in different ways. It destroys their lives by making them have desire for material things and doing deals to get things. In other words, I'm not going to do it unless I get a deal. When we were kids, I remember when we were in yeshiva, years and years ago, Ben Azmanim in Eretz Yisrael, we went in groups to help Yerushalmi Yidden put up sukkahs. That's what we did. There is no such thing today, kimat, unless you pay them. You have to pay them to do it. You ask a group of boys, Ben Azman is to go and have good, we're going to Nariya, what are you talking? We're going to the Tanya. You know, we have it, like, you want me to go and put people's sukkahs up? Okay, how much am I going to get for it? Prizes destroy. You don't realize, without chinuch, prizes actually, when we motivate kids through prizes without doing chinuch, what we risk is destroying their neshamas, creating material desires and drives for things and more and more. They're deal makers. We take from them altruism. We destroy altruism. We condition them only to perform if they get something. And the more you use prizes, the more destructive it can be. The only prize, occasionally you can give it a surprise. You know, if you give a surprise, I don't have time to meirich in the sugya of prizes. But it's a sugya for zich allein. It's a sugya for zich allein. He describes in the book, Rabbi Yaakovson, where in a pirchei group, a boys' pirchei group, it turns out when a Rebbe interviewed the boys about why do you come to pirchei, why do you do this? It was, we get a prize. What would you say to a boy to get him to come here? Oh, we get Rebbe cards, we get prizes. A girls' group, interestingly enough, the girls said the last thing on the list was the prizes. It was because Tillim is important, and it helps refuah, and it helps families. It was the wife of this Rebbe, they did it with the two groups. Turns out the wife, who was running the girls' group, spent time to talk about the value of Tillim. It was all about the value of the chashivas and what you get from Tillim. And Agav, at the end of her Tillim, Shabbos afternoon, Agav, she handed the bag to one of the girls and said, here's a little something for you, Yetzer Hara. It was probably hard to come. But the whole theme of the group was about the chashivas of Tillim and what it does for you. That's chinuch. The boys, classic, is the whole thing was about the prizes, big signs, you're going to get jelly beans and you get Rebbe cards and this type of ices, and they motivated all the boys by the prizes. So it becomes what's the means and what's the end? The means is Tehillim, the end is the prize. Instead of what we would have thought, it's the other way around, right? We're giving the prize, is the means, to the end is saying Tillim. No, the kids understood the painful thing, which is boring Tillim. I'm wasting my Shabbos afternoon saying boring Tillim. I'll overcome that boring experience by getting a reward, a jelly bean or ices at the end. Without chinuch, prizes are profoundly destructive. We don't have that either. We miss it. And we're busy rewarding, jelly bean. It's gone. What we've done is conditioned them into be deal makers. Listen, we want them all to be lawyers. Gewaldig. We should continue doing it. They'll all be like, wheeler dealers. But that's not chinuch. It has no shaykhs to chinuch. It's destructive to chinuch. It takes altruism from our kids. And then you want to put up a sukkah, you want to help with Pesach. Well, today's kids, who has kids who volunteer happily to go and help do anything? It's like amazing. Everyone wants to be rewarded for everything. What do I get from it? You want to put up my sukkah? Well, how much? You got to offer them pizza. That's for sure. You got to offer a pizza party, right? Who gets the sukkah put up without offering a pizza party? As soon as we got it up, we're going to have a pizza party, right? That's what we've done. It's really destructive. Anyway, that was Agav. I just want to throw that in. Okay. So Shai is like this. What do we do? How do we deal with all this? How do we change it all? How do we switch into chinuch, doing chinuch, which means internalizing and associating these two yesodis? By the way, the book is jam-packed with stuff. I've isolated from the book 2 nekudas. That's this whole drasha, to whet your appetite, to know what this book can offer. You know, this is what he does. It's just amazing. It's astonishing. By the way, it's brilliantly written. You know, it's really, incredibly well polished. It's unbelievable. It's really of a very high level. It's something special. So how do we do it? Okay. So there's two answers. Okay. How do we do it? There's a course. Let's do a course for the next year every Sunday afternoon for 4 hours, and we'll duchos and we'll debate all the prot and we'll get it right. So we're not doing that. I got like 20 minutes left. So that we're not doing. No, 15. 15. 15. I got 15. 15. 16. So two answers. Number one, we give them space not to conform instantly. We have to give children a little space not to conform instantly. Therefore, we're not forcing them against their nature instantly, and so they experience that I recognize you're you. I give them a mashu, a little bit. In this generation, there is no other way. And that has to be coupled with the expectation from me to the child that with time you'll do it. I have no problem. I have no question. I have no doubt. It's just a matter of time. I mean, I don't have to be cynical. You have to be careful. Again, that's the course, how to say it, and to make sure they don't think you're playing with them and manipulating them. It's genuine, Rabbi say. You give them a little space to be them, coupled with the absolute expectation that, given time, you'll do it. I know. I'm not frightened. I'm not threatened by you. You'll come. You want it. That's number one. And secondly, that as parents, rebbes, teachers, mechanchim, we have to personify everything that we're trying to teach. That means we have to be over-the-top happy. We have to be happy people. We have to be joyful, even when they defy, and if I may say so, dafka when they defy. We can't give them the feeling like the worst possible all-time parenting non-technique. I call it a non-technique, right? Of the worst all-time. If you ever do this, drop it. Just give up. Give your kids up for adoption. Like, unless you can stop doing this. But to say to your kids, why are you doing this to me? That's about the worst thing you could ever do as a parent or a teacher. And to communicate that to a kid. Why are you doing this? I'm a kid. I'm a nar. You never heard the word nar? I act with nar ishkeit. Because I'm a nar. That's my job. What's wrong with you? No, it's madness. It's about the worst thing you can do, because actually what it's saying is, oh, so this Torah mitzvah's worked well for you, right? You're miserable all day. So how well is all this Torah you're teaching me? How well is this working for you, buddy? That's what they're feeling. It's utterly the opposite of chinuch. The internalization. David, I need 12. I need 12. We need the internalization. It's through your smile and positive attitude, through your metzias, that nothing gets in the way. I'm enjoying this. Your defiance, your struggle is my pleasure. That's what I'm here for, to help you. Your mazala and tivo is emerging, and I'm willing to embrace it, and we'll work it out. These two yesodis are the two steps, the first two steps towards like shifting this whole problem and turning control into chinuch. Let me give you the first example, giving space. A couple of quick examples, because I see they just cut my time down here. I thought I had longer, I'm sorry. Giving space, that means working with his personality while creating a simple future expectation. Here's the first example. They're upset with me? No. Here's the first example. According to the principles of Chinuch that we now understand means internalization and association, what do? Your fourth grade Rebbe, I'm just giving two quick examples, just to bring out the point. Your fourth grade Rebbe, you finish learning Chumash, and the Rebbe says, boys, put away your Chumashim, take out your Mishnayos. And the boys quickly put away their Chumashim, take out Mishnayos, except for Yankel. Yankel sits there leaning on his hand on the desk, and just nothing. Chumash is open, ignores you completely. So then, of course, the Rebbe, in old school Chinuch, Rebbe says, Yankel, Mishnayos. And Yankel goes, okay, got a problem, showdown, right? So now the Rebbe says, Yankel, take out your Mishnayos. I'm sorry, do you mind take out your Mishnayos. Everyone's now quiet. You can see the class is like, what's he going to do? This is a showdown now, right? And the Rebbe probably threatens Yankel, tells him, you have to take it out now. Put away your Chumash! And Yankel goes like this, throws his Chumash over onto the floor, and 3 or 4 boys giggle. Now he's really in trouble. So of course Yankel gets thrown out, and the whole thing's a mess. The exact opposite of Chinuch. Giving him space for him to be him, this is the Nakud I'm trying to bring out. Rebbe says, put away your Chumashim, take out your Mishnayos. They all do it, Yankel leaves it. One time you're like, Yankel, he might be daydreaming. Yankel, take out your Mishnayos. He looks carefully, and he sees Yankel goes like this. And he walks over to Yankel, and he whispers quietly so no one else can hear into Yankel's ear, Yankel, it's fine, don't take out your Mishnayos. Hashem prefers you learn Mishnayos when you're happy. Right now you're not in a good mood. It's fine. If you'll be in a good mood soon, you'll take out Mishnayos. Okay, Uncle, don't worry about it. Rebbe goes back and immediately starts teaching. Now I've done this over the years so many times. I already know the results. 30 seconds to 60 seconds later, quietly Yankel takes out his Mishnayos and he starts joining the class, and by the end he's involved. No showdown, no fight. What did you do? What's the logic? What's the chachma? You gave him the little space. His transition from Chumash to Mishnayos, for whatever reason, was lo lefi mazoloi v'tivoi. It wasn't, you understand, he needed time to transition, to recover. Echveis nishvas, maybe he was dreaming, I don't know what. But you saw it and you gave it to him, coupled with the simple expectation that I want you to enjoy this. This is meant to be enjoyable. And when you're ready, you'll do it. When you're ready, you'll join us. And of course, if day after day, your uncle doesn't open his Mishnayos, so later in the day, you keep repeating it later. You call him over privately. You say, hey, uncle, what's the problem? I care about you. What's going on? You talk to him, of course. But at the moment you give him space, you allow him to be him, and he's seen. He gets noticed. Do you understand? You're working with his uniqueness, with the simple expectation that you want this too, and guess what? You've installed in him, Hashem wants you to enjoy learning Mishnayos. So I don't want you doing it right now if you're miserable. You'll do it when you're happy. It's such a profound and powerful intervention. And v'idach, you can go, fine. Let me read this one. This one's from his book. This example, this is such a fabulous example. Won't stand up for the Rebbe. Listen to this. My amazing story is just another example of the general atmosphere that pervaded the yeshiva. The popular impression that a yeshiva for troubled youth necessitates a lower level of discipline is ridiculous. In our yeshiva, it was exactly the opposite. The discipline there was unequaled. There was a clear sense of authority without any yelling, punishments, or temper. That's why it was the real thing. Sounds crazy, right? But it's true. I'll give another example of that same Rebbe's style of discipline. This happened in the second week of the school year. A boy sitting in front of me did not stand up when the Rebbe walked in. The Rebbe looked at him and waited. The boy didn't rise. The Rebbe continued to wait. The boy held his own. But I myself started feeling uneasy at the way the Rebbe was looking at him. It was the same look, calm and detached, that made it so unsettling. No anger, no frustration, just noticing. A long moment passed and the Rebbe decided to drop the issue. I was surprised. He made no attempt to get the boy to rise. He simply began the class as though nothing had happened. Gave him space. We got that? I looked around at the other boys. There were no grins, no smirks. It was clear the rebel had not won the respect of the other boys. The atmosphere in the class was serious and a bit uneasy. I can't tell you exactly why and how, but it was clear that the rebel's authority had not been compromised. This pasha because he didn't get upset, didn't lose his cool. He gave him space, and then he continued teaching. But this boy wasn't finished making his statement. The next day again, he didn't stand up. Again, the Rebbe gazed at him quietly for a long moment. The boy held his own. But this time, after the long, uncomfortable silence, the Rebbe did respond, "You know that you have to stand up." The Rebbe said this calmly, almost detachedly. It was as though he was conveying a technical piece of information. "You know, you have to stand up." The boy responded defiantly, "I don't want to." The Rebbe answered in a very soft tone, as though sharing a secret with him. "It isn't a question of whether you want to. It's just something you have to do." The boy spat out defiantly, "I don't feel like standing up for you." A small smile played on the Rebbe's lips. "It's not about me. Personally, I don't care whether you stand or not. You have to stand because it's the rule here." I've heard that statement plenty of times, but this was the first time I really believed it. But this boy still stood his ground. "I'm not getting up." "This is problematic behavior," the Rebbe informed him. "It's very off." The scene repeated itself every day that week. The boy didn't get up. The Rebbe informed him that there was something very wrong with his behavior, and then began teaching as though nothing had happened, giving him space, letting him emerge. With the expectation and information that it will happen inevitably. During recess, the other boys started pressuring him to stand. His defiance was becoming annoying and making us all uncomfortable. In some of my previous yeshivas, he would have been turned into a hero. But here in this yeshiva for rebels and problem kids, he was practically being ostracized. He succumbed. The next week he did get up. On the first day of the week, he kind of half stood, leaning on the desk as though he was reading his Gemara. Everyone looked at him at the Rebbe, but the Rebbe didn't react. He simply began the class. The next day the boy stood normally. Again the Rebbe didn't react. He didn't capitalize on the boy's discomfort or celebrate his victory. He just acted as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Only at the end of the class, after most of the boys left the classroom, did the Rebbe stop him as he was leaving the classroom. He shook the boy's hand and said, "Good for you. You're a real man." The boy turned red, lowered his head in embarrassment, and said thanks. Do you understand? In this story, he gave him room to emerge. This is the first issue. You have to have the confidence that he will do it. You have to have the confidence. Don't look at the door, please. Right? You have to have the total confidence and convey it. It's not personal. It's nothing to do with me. I'm just giving you information about life and about chinuch and about what you have to be doing. That's all, nothing more. And so you give him the room and the space for him to emerge, and they will emerge. And we don't stifle and squash that this second you have to comply, because that's not chinuch, Rabbi say. The second issue is we have to personify it. Rabbi Leib has a beautiful, beautiful piece in one of his svarim on chinuch on this issue called harotza. What's harotza? He says, "B'knas chinuch amma shechoyshev she'aderech ha'yechida she'efshel lechanech ha'yom hi." What's the only way to do chinuch today? Halidei she'agia lematzav ba'yeled yaritz es ha'hoyrem v'esamachanchim. The only way is hiyaritz. Harotza is venerate, admire, look up to. The only way chinuch can work, he says, in this day and age, in this store that we're dealing with, the only possible way is that he venerates, he looks up to and respects his parents and his teachers. By force, we're not going to achieve very much. Rabbi Leib's words. I'm so happy he said it. And being too weak and soft doesn't help either at all. It doesn't work. Because we have to be disciplined. We have to say the expectation, you've got to stand. It's the rules. It's not doing me. It's not personal. It's just the way these are the rules. But if the parents and teachers would cause mu'uratz, veneration, it's much more likely they will be listened to. Much more like, and he ends up his piece, not for now because we're running out of time, that he says, Ad Kedei Kach was in previous generations, there was a concept of harotza, a veneration for parents. That's gone. The lid's gone. It's gone. But there was a musag, and he says he's saying this just litze musagim, that once upon a time he knew a family where they wanted to punish the child. They took away the child's right to make the father's bed that day. They took his right away. That was the way they punished the child. Kol kach, he says, there was an inyan of harotza once upon a time. The fact is, I want to tell you something. I have met countless kids later on, young adults, who were struggling, they're still trying to come back, they're trying to find their way. They all want to come back. It's a pella otzim, by the way. The 75%, I'm telling you, want to be, probably the 85%. I think all of them. They all want to be with us. I'm telling you, it's Mashgiach, Shlita, Matzel, my Rebbe, Shafru Shlema, he always used to say, there's no such thing as dropouts, they're all push-outs. It was a line of his, no such thing as dropouts. They're all push-outs. They want to be here, and they do, you see that. So I ask kids many times, listen, I have 2 more things and I'm finished. 2 points, I'm finished. 2 points, I'm done. 2 points. Okay. Don't look at the door. I have loads more, but just 2 points. And then we'll finish with this. I asked countless young adults later on who were struggling and trying to come back, trying to find their way. Tell me something. It was a hard journey, I get it. And you feel C or D, usually they're Ds, right? Burn the building down. I say, but wasn't there one Rebbe, who reached you, who connected with, wasn't there one who, you feel like, and they all say it, but oh, yeah, are you kidding? My 4th grade Rebbe, my 6th grade, my 9th, everyone has one Rebbe, and they claim, this Rebbe saved my life, and my Torah mitzvahs, whatever I do today is because of him. And they say it very impassioned. So I asked the young people, so tell me something, do you mind if I ask you a difficult question? Nothing personal here, it's not for hair, it's just a question. I'm doing research. They say, sure. I say, this Rebbe saved your life, right? Your Torah mitzvah is because of him, right? Yeah, 100%. Can you tell me one thing he taught you? Tell me one piece of Torah he taught you. Not one ever remembers. Not one ever remembers. Because it was you. It was who you were. My mother, Alea Shalom, was a master teacher for 40 years in London. I had a brother who worked in the education department where we lived, and he checked the records. And he told us that Mum was number 2 teacher ranked in London. That's very high. Number 2. So I asked her one time, Mommy, what made you such a good teacher? And she said, nothing. She said, every day in the classroom, I wanted to present myself as a person that every child would want to be. They want to be me. And if they want to be me, then all the knowledge I'm trying to shift over to them, that's internalization and association. Because if they want to be me, then everything I got to sell for kaif, they want, because they want to be me. Let me finish with this. In Pasha's Vayigash, at the end of the beginning of the Pasha, so Yehuda, I'm finishing. Yehuda makes his impassioned plea. He made a mistake, l'chayra. He told Yankov Avinu, don't worry about Binyamin. Everything's going to be fine. I'll bring him back. And Yankov says, no, I'm not letting him go. I lost Yosef. I'm not losing him. He says, don't worry, Tati, we'll never get, and the others, and we'll get stuck, and blah, blah, blah. And so Yankov Avinu gives in, and he lets him take Binyamin, and then it happens, this unimaginable thing. The Gavia is there in his sack. He's done. He's in jail. And he makes this impassioned plea, begging, pleading with who he doesn't yet know is Yosef, let him go back, please. And he tells him, he finishes, the pasuk says at the end, he says, now when I go back to your servant, my father, they're connected to each other. It sounds like they're so connected, he'll die. He won't be able to live. 1 minute. They won't be able to live. How will they live? Zog the Balaturim. He says, Beis b'Mesorah hacha ve'idach. Here, and we find this nafsho kshura in Mishlei Kaf Beis. What does it say over there? Iveles kshura. Iveles kshura b'leiv na. Foolishness is tied up in the heart of a nar. Foolishness. And he says the Balaturim, that I'll tell you two pshatim. The first pshat he's saying is this, that Yehuda is saying to Yosef, let him go. And even if you're right, I don't know how I assure you he didn't steal the coast. And I don't know how he got there. But even if he did, Ivelis Kshura B'Leiv Na, he's a Tibish. He's foolish, he's a Nar. Kal V'choim, I got to take him home to his father to help him grow up. Inami. Mipnei shevalto keshura, because foolishness is tied up in the leiv, in the heart, the neshama of a child. Sorich shetei nafsho keshura benafsho shel aviv and his mechanech. His nefesh needs to be tied up with his nefesh of his father. Kedei lachanchoi, to do chinuch. Without the kesher, without the nafsho kshura benafsho, without him feeling that connection to you, that I want to be you, then chinuch can't occur. It's all control. The act of chinuch, the internalization, the association, it simply doesn't occur. So if we allow for these two things, Rabbi, I believe, again, this is one nukudala to whet your appetite about this, and to try and bring out this nukuda, to turn control into chinuch. It needs internalization and association. We do that by being the person they want to be and giving them that little space. We don't have to jump on their heads the moment they don't do what we do. Give them a little room with the simple, honest, non-personal expectation that with time, this is what you're going to be doing. And with that, I believe we can do the chashka nafsha b'dveikas boyisbarach, and we won't find the kotzba musam inicha. Thank you very much.